right, here they are. He is the three-term United States Representative from California's 49th District, Congressman Darrell Issa. That's pretty good for a Republican.
Yeah, I get that, too.
And he is the
I brought my own audience.
He is the 9-term U.S. Representative from Georgia's 1st District, Congressman Jack Kingston.
All right.
Not bad.
I'm working proud.
So as I mentioned, this is kind of a tag team wrestling thing. I'm going to go against you guys right up front.
Is it fair? There's only two of us.
We'll see.
Okay.
And then Arianna's going to come out, and then
She's your backup. We're ready.
Katie, bar the door. You're in trouble. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is we see all these town halls, and it is mostly Republicans who are causing the ruckus, let's be honest. And I hear a lot of people saying, I want my country back. Could you tell us, as Republicans, country back from what? What one thing has changed? What one thing do you not have that you had before Barack Obama became president? Because I don't know what these people are talking about when they say, I want my country back.
Well, for one thing, for one thing, we had less debt, as the debt now is $1.3 trillion.
Oh, no, you didn't.
And I'm only guessing on that. I'm only, Bill.
Who ran up the debt? You got to be, wow.
Bill, if you look at Bush's...
I'm going to bring back the doc and talk about balls again. Come on.
Bush's highest deficit, which was too high, and I admit, absolutely, Republicans spent too much money. But now it is on supercharge. And what has happened, Bush's highest deficit was like $470 billion. We're now at $1.3 trillion.
Yes, because of the hole that he dug.
Well,
cost.
This is
Obama's got to spend money to make money, Jack.
The biggest thing, the biggest one-ticket item he had was the TARP bill, which Obama voted on twice. So how Obama can say that was a Bush deal when he voted for it is beyond me.
But in fairness, we have two major new agenda. We have cap and trade, and we have the health care initiative. These are both trillion-dollar deals. So, you know, it's not real money anywhere else, but in Washington, we still can calculate
$1 trillion over how long?
Well, over 10 years.
Okay,
but remember, giving every senior citizen prescription drugs, Medicare Part D, ended up being about $400 billion over 10 years. So
unpaid for. See, that's the difference.
Paid for every year. You're absolutely right that Medicare has a terminal problem.
When Bush gave away drugs to old people, it was not paid for. Obama has started this discussion by saying this has to be paid for. Our new health care program has to be paid for.
Bill, now I just had 11 town meetings, and the thing that you would be happy to know is that the First Amendment, freedom of speech, is alive and well. People come out and they have a lot to say. But you know, the charge that people are being bussed in is ridiculous. If the Democrat Party thinks people are being bussed in, it's not needed. I mean, people are there because they're very, very concerned.
You're arguing against a question I didn't ask.
Well, in terms of the spending, $1.29 trillion with an $800 billion tax increase, and then it still has a deficit of about $230 billion.
But Bill, so you understand the term paid for in Washington? There's a lot of ways to use it, but let me just use it the way I would. If you are running bigger deficits and you're adding tax increases, but you're still running bigger deficits afterwards, you're not paying for, you're simply adding taxes while increasing spending beyond the taxes you add. Paying for would be what Bill Clinton did, whether you like it or not. He did the largest tax increase in American history at the time. Then he and Republicans controlled spending so that we got to a relatively close to balanced budget. That was because he did a tax increase and we did comparative austerity. And Jack was part of that revolution. So if you want to talk about paying for is if you have a tax increase, you don't have new spending, so you're further away.
Okay, but the people who are standing up at these town hall meetings and screaming,
we call them citizens.
I want my people, citizens.
Registered voters in our district.
Okay, right. I didn't call them hooligans. I said people. Is that an insult? Yes, people. Wow. What a nightmare.
See, but
you guys are more sensitive than the doc.
But, Bill, you're assuming that they're Republicans. I got to tell you, the madder-than-hell Democrats are in that crowd, too.
Okay, some of them are. But what I'm saying is your answer to my question was they're mad about debt. They're not mad about debt. Let's get real. When they say
I'm saving my answer, but
When they say I
it's a
want
good
my
answer, though.
country back, what they really mean is I want my country back from a colored guy running it, don't they?
No,
Isn't that
Bill.
what this is all about?
I think what you're saying, Bill,
It's all emotional.
it's all about control. And I think what people are worried about
And they
is
lost
losing
it.
a lot of freedom. And you, with your big libertarian streak, which I have a lot of admiration for you about, they're saying, you know what, Uncle Sam's going to make the decision for me on health care. He's going to say I have to buy it out of an exchange, plus I have to buy it, period. I no longer have the choice to buy it or not buy it. And I think there's a fundamental question here. Do we say to a 25-year-old, you have to buy health care? Which is what the Obama folks are saying. And I think a 25-year-old ought to be able to say, you know what, I don't want it. I'm going to take the risk. It's a calculated risk, but it's not an unreasonable risk.
But there is a lot of scare tactics that I don't think are true. I mean,
I'm shocked there'd be scare tactics coming out of Washington.
Not out of Washington, out of Alaska, actually. This is Sarah Palin's comment. Put it up here that she wrote on Facebook. The America I know and love. The America I know and love is not one in which my parents or my baby with Down syndrome will have to stand in front of Obama's death panel so his bureaucrats can decide.
I can't believe somebody in politics would use a scare tactic. I mean, you know, what did we hear from the pink ladies in the left? Bush lied, Bush lied. What kind of scare tactics were there? I agree. It's rhetorical. It's a scare tactic. There's no question about it.
Oh, okay. And Bush didn't lie?
Bill, I'd like to answer that remark straight.
But there are no death panels. Just to be clear, you would separate yourself from Sarah Palin on this issue and say there are no death panels.
Every Republican,
death panels.
Every Republican,
no death panels.
Every Republican gets to be a leader now because we are so far in the minority that we are free agents. I am concerned about going from 17% of GDP, which is too high on health care, to 21% of GDP when we're competing against Canada at 9%. I'm concerned about the basic economics of getting better health care. You know, France spends almost a third less than we spend, and you're right, they're number one. We have to have a plan to spend less and do better. Right now, we only have a plan to do more and spend more.
And tax more.
And tax more. We don't have a plan to fix health care. We have a plan to spend more money on health care. And that's the plan that blue dog Democrats are rejecting along with Republicans. And that's serious. It's really serious. It's one of the few things we're dealing with that isn't funny because if we break an already bad system, we can't afford that.
I don't know if I agree with that premise. I do think, first of all, again, the president said this is not going anywhere unless we can pay for it as we go. I mean, let's be honest. What are the big costs? They are end of life, last 3 months of life.
Already covered.
Yeah, but that's
nothing his program fixes it.
An extraordinary amount of the health care budget goes to that. And when the president suggested that we just have consultations about that, it was demagogued as euthanasia, as these death panels. Okay? Another big cost, the overhead. Medicare's overhead is like 1%. Private insurance is closer to 30%.
But Medicare has an unfunded obligation of $36 trillion. 9 out of 10 seniors taking Medicare have to have a supplemental insurance policy. If Medicare worked, why do 9 out of 10, and that's the statistical fact, I mean, that's not a dispute, 9 out of 10 have to buy additional insurance to Medicare. And you can ask any senior that. So if it worked, why is that the case? Plus, there's a cost
why are they
shift.
so happy with it, though?
In California, they're happy because they have Medicare Advantage as part of their premium that they buy. In this plan, they take it away. They literally take away a program that people are happy with here in California that's working. More importantly, you just had a doctor out there who said, look, I've never had an argument for Medicare. That's probably true. Medicare has a 10% fraud rate. Medicare only pays 70% reimbursement of what he'd be paid for a 55 or 60-year-old patient. So if a patient goes from being 62 to being 65, he gets 70 cents on the dollar of what that really pain-in-the-butt private health care insurer was giving him. So right off the bat, Medicare is cost-shifting to the rest of us. Medicare has its problems. We should be fixing that. But back to the basic premise. If you want to say they're paying for it, you can't pay for inefficiency. You can't pay for running up the total cost of health care to 21 or 22% of GDP when you're trying to compete against France at 11% of GDP. We've got to get health care fixed. and it's got to be fixed not with more money, but with a more competitive system. And that includes
that's
tort
what
reform.
they're trying to do. That's what the public option
Bill, there's
is.
not one bit of tort reform in that
wait
bill,
a
and the
second.
doctor would tell you that.
But you guys fight against the public option. You say that means that's the equivalent of government taking over health care.
Bill, I
authored
the public option. I authored the public option. H.R. 3438 gives every single citizen the right to the same health care that Jack and I have. Gives them full access to the already existing 200 choice programs that we use in the federal government.
How are you going to pay for that?
It doesn't cost a penny.
Of course it does. The reason why you guys get it is because, and by the way, it's not just congressmen, it's all federal.
Absolutely.
It's 8.5 million people. It's because the government can bargain for drugs, for example, because they're a big...
The government doesn't bargain. Every one of our choices are private programs that the government simply pays 70%
But if you let
of.
everybody into that, you know, I mean, you're a Republican, you would understand this. When you let everyone into the country club, it's ruined. If everyone...
Wait a second. Just so you understand, Ted Kennedy's on that program, and he is high cost. So are a lot of the other. The Senate is filled with a lot of very old people. You know, the fact is, this is the federal workforce is not somehow magically different than the private workforce. We have young people, we have middle-aged people, and we have old people.
And pre-existing illnesses.
And pre-existing illnesses. And we have no charge for pre-existing illnesses, no premium for age. Guess what? We can do that by law, allow everyone in this audience to have access to our health care programs that we already have at the cost we already have, and the federal government doesn't spend one penny, but Americans get a better deal. Yes, it's reining in insurance companies, but why not rein in insurance companies if, in fact, we're saving a system that the people who have health care like?
What do you think of...
And Bill, I want to say this, it's very important. If the president's plan is so good, he's got the majority in the Senate and in the House. He doesn't need one single Republican vote. And what he was talking about today is, if I heard him correctly, he said, get out of the way. I'm tired of listening to you. If it's such a good plan, he doesn't need our votes. He would get it done without us. So for them to turn around and say, this is the Republicans' fault, well, maybe those folks back home who are raising so much cane, maybe they're talking to Democrats as well, and Democrats are listening and say, maybe we better back off this plan.
Okay, Senator Voinovich, in your party, he's retiring. He was asked how much of this opposition coming from the Republicans is sincere and how much is politics. He said 50-50.
Well, I don't think I don't know. I don't know how you get that. You can't take the politics out of politics. Washington spends absolutely everything.
But this is life and death. This is people's health.
But well, let me say this: having just had 11 town meetings in which I asked everybody in town, I know of a couple members of Congress who have had invitation only, and they're not Republican, by the way. And I know of one Democrat who would not answer any questions at his town meetings. My town meetings were balanced. I had 30 to 40 minutes Q&A each time, and people were raising cane. But I think when the more people realize that this healthcare system, $2.4 trillion, 17% of the economy, it's so enormous that they say, you know, I've been viewing it from my own little foxhole. Yeah. It's hard to back up and get a 10,000-foot view.
Senator Voinovich also said that one of the problems in your party is that the South is taking over.
Is that Southern California?
Yeah, it must be me. I was close to the Mexican border as you can practically get.
You know, he said we have too many Jim DeMints and the fellow from Texas.
He's getting too many NASCAR fumes up there in Ohio. You know, Bill, I saw those comments, and this is my thinking of it. Number one, he's tired, and the Ohio, he's resigning, as you know, this is his last term. The Ohio GOP had their brains kicked, mostly because of their own scandals and plain out ineptitude. So I don't see how I can turn around and blame it on the South. However, let me say this. I think that he's got a point. We can't regain the majority without California. We can't do it without New England. Now, Darrell and I had a weekly theme team.
Without Hispanics.
Absolutely. And
you know, why didn't any of you vote for Sotomayor? I mean,
if we'd been senators, we would have.
Yes,
you both would have voted for Sotomayor.
I think so. Listen, she needed a hearing process. They got the hearing process, and after that, you know, they just have to vote the way they saw.
But be honest. I mean, you know, most of the birthers, the people who don't think Obama is president, when you look at that, they're mostly from the South. I wonder why. Okay. Now, Sotomayor, Hispanic. there's no reason why the Hispanics couldn't be a block of the Republican Party. They're hardworking, they're very religious, okay, social, conservative on social values. The only reason...
Why do you like them then? That doesn't sound like your group.
The only reason I think that they're not being welcomed into the party is they're too dark.
Not at all. That's not the case.
Well, why did they vote against them?
I'll put my darkness against theirs
Let me say this.
anytime.
Why are senators racist if they ideologically vote against the Hispanic Republicans? But why weren't the Democrats called racist when they voted against Clarence Thomas? Why was it okay to vote against a black man based on ideological views and not one?
His qualifications do not nearly stack up against hers. That's why.
Bill.
His qualifications.
And then what about Miguel Estrada, a Bush Hispanic appointee?
The guy on chips?
No, this guy was in the D.C. court circuit, and he was held up by Joe Biden and Patrick Leahy, and they weren't racist.
You're right. The Democrats did start that. The Democrats did start the politicization of the process. They used advise and consent. I think Ginsburg was confirmed by something like 97-3, and they knew she was a liberal. The Democrats did start that.
And that should be the standard. And when Jack and I said we probably would have voted for her, the standard should be, one, is she qualified? She's qualified. Is she the choice of the president? She's the choice of the president. We have to have a valid reason to say no. Now, I disagree with some of her decisions, and some of them were reversed. But ultimately, the standard constitutionally should be those two tests. And I'm personally ashamed of people who figure that their politics should come first, and then, oh, by the way, can she overcome or he overcome the hurdles on both sides of the aisle?
All right, I want to do drugs now. No, I mean I want to do drugs as an issue.
We want to stay in office.
Yeah.
we better pass on that.
But we'll supervise.
Because one of the big stories of this week was that Americans are using twice as much antidepressants as they used to, and I think we will never.
He came with me.
Some
he
people
came with
need
me, Bill.
more.
Don't worry.
Actually.
Now, Hopitor, is that like hopium?
Well, no, don't give away my bit.
Do you have any hopium
Please,
in there?
you're giving away my comedy.
Is there any hopium in there? I just have to know that.
I think Ice is on Ritalin at the moment. He's been on a roll all night. Have you noticed
It's
that?
caffeine.
His energy level. It's coming off one of those town meetings.
You guys hang out at C Street. Is that the problem? But I think we're never going to solve our health care bill unless we solve the problem that, everybody thinks they need a pill for everything, and the drug companies come up with a pill for everything. For example, we have some new drugs that have come on the market. You see where I'm going with this?
I can see it.
Okay.
Get to the good stuff.
For example, yes. Here we go. Blaberol. This powerful medication actually reroutes the synapses in your brain so you can make sense out of Sarah Palin's incoherent speeches. Hey, do you have one for Joe Biden? I have one coming up if you shut up. Hopitor. Are you an Obama supporter feeling your hope starting to fade? Well, Hopitor provides a full-day supply of hope and is loaded with antioxidants. When real change is looking harder and harder to believe in, there's Hopitor. Okay. Oh, I like this. Botox is a big hit. Ladies, do you have trouble getting your boyfriend to open up? Well, now there's Botox. Oh, this one is for Ryan O'Neal. Incestulex. Tired of the heartbreak and embarrassment of hitting on family members at funerals? Incestulex, the first anti-aphrodisiac designed to lower sex drives at family gatherings. Don't pee in your gene pool, get Incestulex. Oh, and finally, this is my favorite. Grow-a-set. If you're a Democratic congressman still on the fence about Obamacare, there is a pill for you. Grow-a-set, the first testosterone supplement designed to help legislators man up. When it's time for some spine, get Grow-a-set. Okay. Let's bring in Arianna. She is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Huffington Post, whose 2003 bestseller, Pigs at the Trough, is now re-released in paperback. Arianna Huffington is right over here. Hello, lady. You know the Congress people?
Huffington here.
Have you ever met these guys on any other show?
Absolutely. I've met them. I've known them for a very long time.
Oh, you
Remember,
have?
I used to be a Republican.
That's right.
Exactly. We
Arianna
go a
once
long
came
way
to my
back.
factory and did a town hall meeting with all of the Hispanics in my company, all the people that work there, plus a whole other group
What do you
on
mean?
behalf of Michael Huffington.
What is your factory? I don't know about this.
Well, it's a former factory, and if I name it on the air, it's an ethics violation. So just say it was in a previous life in which both of us were doing different things.
So you went to his sweatshop, and
Right.
what happened? I'm sorry. What were
But
they
it had
making
healthcare.
here? Were they
No, but
making
everybody-
Incestulex?
No, but everybody was very well behaved in those town hall days, you know. There
Right.
was nobody hanging a congressman in effigy.
Right.
There was nobody talking about lynching. These were different times.
So, you know, I wanted to have you on tonight because this issue came up this week because I remember the first time you were ever on our show.
1993.
1993, and your big issue was Prozac and, you know, giving drugs to especially children, right? Well, it was in the news, as I mentioned this week, twice as many people as 10 years ago are on antidepressants, including, it said, up from the age of 6 and up.
Yes, and even 3-year-olds, they put them on antidepressants. It's a major epidemic. It's a major problem that is not a right-left issue. I hope we can all agree.
It is not, right.
It is not. I hope we can all agree that children are not just products of chemistry, you know, that they are not going to be manipulated at an early age. It's just an unbelievable thing. If you look at the symptoms of attention deficit disorder, for example, you know, fidgets, interrupts, you know, they're the symptoms of childhood.
Yes.
You know, they're children.
Especially boys.
And now we have, you know, let me just make it very clear. I believe there are people who are clinically depressed and they need drugs. I'm not saying nobody needs drugs, but I don't believe there are millions of people.
Right.
I don't believe there are millions of people who need antidepressants.
And of course, when you put kids on drugs, later on in life, they're going to get used to the drugs. You know,
Absolutely. They don't learn how to deal with their own emotions, how to deal with the fact that life is not a joyride. Sometimes there is reason to be depressed.
right. They define clinical depression as being low, like, you know, blue for 2 weeks. Are they kidding?
It really is a
It's
very
been 200
serious
days.
problem.
Yeah. Show the ad.
That's okay.
We got to hope it's. But show the ad for Abilify. I saw this in the Inquirer, the Inquirer, but it's still a real ad. Talk to your doctor. Adding Abilify to an antidepressant, such as one of these, can help you with unresolved symptoms of depression. So, in other words, if you're on Lexapro, Zoloft, Paxil, all this shit, and it's not enough, this is like sprinkling angel dust in your joint.
Well, it's really also the logical ultimate conclusion is what you showed at the beginning of the show. You know, Michael Jackson, who couldn't get to sleep without an IV of an anesthetic. I mean, look at the millions of people who can't go to sleep without a sleeping tablet. I mean, this is not normal. You know, there is no reason why people can't learn to manage their stress in a way that does not require a sleeping tablet. And this is also at the heart of the healthcare debate. Because how are we ever going to deal with healthcare if we don't learn to manage our stress better so that we don't actually either go to drugs or to overeating or to some other form of that leads to healthcare problems.
People think that whatever happens to them because of, again, their lifestyle, they just continue to manage it. I saw this ad the other night on TV, I'm not kidding, for this portable oxygen tank that people carry around. And the guy, you know, they have the tube right in their nose, but they're bragging about the fact that this oxygen tank never runs out of oxygen. You can take it anywhere. They show the guy at the ball game. And he's like, I don't care if I never get back. Because he's got the oxygen tank and he's got the tube right in his nose. It's like, hey, I can go to the ball game. That's not the answer. The answer is to find out why you need this kind of oxygen and reverse that holistically.
Well, and that's actually one of the problems with the healthcare bill. There isn't enough about prevention. And if we don't do something fundamental
And you know
about
what?
prevention.
And you know what? That is something both parties absolutely can get together on, is wellness. And it really should start with children, the eating habits, the school lunch program, nutrition, and getting them off Adderall. It seems like that's the drug of choice of the hurried parent.
And then, of course, what is ironic, and that's really the supreme irony for me, is that we drug children at an earlier and earlier age without knowing what is the impact on their brain chemistry. And then we tell them to say no to illegal drugs.
Yeah, you know, it's always ironic to me. Bill, you were probably a perfect child, but Issa and I actually, we were raised in the age where, you know, if you misbehaved too much, you got paddled in school.
Paddled.
And it's funny that, okay, the three of us got paddled. We have that in common.
Yeah. Our youthful indiscretions.
But it's ironic.
Let's not bond over it.
Paddling now is inhumane, but drugging a kid is the way to go. That's
right.
That's accepted.
That's an excellent point.
Well,
Right.
I actually think I'm not in favor of paddling. I want to make that clear right here.
But there are other ways. You can discipline children by having them stand in the corner. You can give them the after school,
and then paddle
the stay after school. There are ways to let them know that there are adverse effects for misbehavior and help them with their parents do better. You know, we have gotten into a society that we always look and say, well, the French are number one. But are we looking at what's different in the French society in the way of lifestyle, like walking? We have a lot of things that we need to look at. So I want to figure out.
And they're not sexually uptight.
No, they're not. But I want to know and Arianna, you want to know, what is it that makes the French healthier than us? What is it that makes the Canadians spend less than us? And take every one of the best ideas and bring them in. Now, you know, the doctor you had on earlier, he goes livid when he talks about litigation because he knows how much that drives procedures that are not necessary. That's part of our problem, too.
Yes.
You drug the kid, you don't get sued. You do anything else, you do.
That's true. You're right.
As a parent, I must say that I've heard it from teachers with both my children that they needed to be on ADD or they needed to be on something. And I had to fight the schools because increasingly now the schools find it's the easiest way out. Instead of dealing with rambunctious children, with children who basically are trying to find their way in life, and parents who are stressed out and don't have the time to be with them, to talk with them, drugs is the answer.
It's so sick. It's like what they do with a pet on a plane. You know, you have a pet and you're taking him on a cross-country trip, you give him the doggy downer and he just sleeps and he doesn't cause you any problems. They do it with their friggin' children. And I don't even care about kids.
And then they also take away PE. And the thing a kid under 10 years old needs more than anything is recess. And let them burn off a little energy, and then they'll come back and they won't be so fidgety and you won't have to drug them because they've taken it out.
That's why you can't keep cutting school programs. That's the other problem. I mean, now with the cuts all across the states, one of the first things that gets cut is PE or the arts or something that gives them an expression that now they don't have.
But with all due respect, I mean, kids don't need school to play outside. They don't have to have it organized. I remember when I was a kid, we just used to go outside and play. There didn't have to be a gym teacher standing over you making you do it. It's in your nature as a child to go and play.
But you need the break from math and social studies. If you're 8 years old and you're in class 5 to 6 hours a day, that's way too much. You've got to have that physical break to play, you know, freeze tag or, you know, play on the monkey bars or jungle gym, whatever it is.
That's where the terrorists train.
Those are all illegal these days.
All right, let me change the subject because I know you want to plug your book.
Where is it, by the way?
Which I think I have a blurb on that book, don't I?
Yes, you do. You have a blurb on all my books.
I'm the blurb king. Yes, and I remember that book. Great book, and it's more sort of prescient than ever because it was called Pigs at the Trough, about, of course, our financial misdoings. But now, what do you think about what's going on as far as Obama's reforming the system? Because, you know, I heard him bragging today, now that we had some good economic news, he said, well, we brought the financial system back from the brink. But have we really?
We haven't, and that's why I reissued the book, because the same problems that were happening in 2003 with Enron and WorldCom and Global Crossing are now happening on a much larger scale. You know, in 2003, we were basically playing with billions of shareholder wealth. Right now, we are playing with trillions of taxpayer money.
Right.
And Obama and the administration have rescued the financial system, but they have not reformed it. So it's a little bit like being in a hostage setup. You know, we paid them the king's ransom. $4.7 trillion went to Wall Street, but we didn't get the hostage back. The hostage was the financial system, and they still are holding it there. I mean, they still basically at any moment could come back to us and say we need more money or we'll blow the system up. The only way, Bill, that we can actually change that is to say no institution can be too big to fail. If it's too big to fail, it's too big to exist, period. Because there they are again, back to risky business, back to dealing with all these derivatives that got us into trouble before. They're making profits, multi-billion-dollar profits for Citi and Goldman and Bank of America. And the other economy, the real economy, is still in trouble. You know, just because unemployment went from 9.5 to 9.4, that means nothing. The real economy is in serious trouble.
These gentlemen would probably object when you said you can limit a company from being too big to fail, because that means the government can tell a company how big it can be.
No, actually, we wouldn't say
like
that.
I say, they're on your side,
No,
and that's a great thing.
He's read the book, obviously.
No, Arianna has the right idea, which is companies have to know there is peril for what they do. And, you know, we say, well, we let one fail and now we can't let another fail. Ridiculous. The fact is money would have streamed in to buy companies and assets that made sense for a turnaround. Instead, what we did was we started throwing our money, a big chunk of our money. AIG, $180 billion went into them. And by the way, they made $2 billion this quarter.
And at first it was $85 billion.
Right.
And then it crept up another $100
$60 billion ended up in other countries for credit default swap guarantees that actually were legitimate to default on. And we did it all, by the way, on behalf of a British corporation that had become insolvent as a division. And you look and say, wait a second here. If we had simply said, what is our absolute national interest, and whatever that is, okay, to look at that. But the rest of it, we didn't need the Bank of Ireland to be bailed out by the United States. And that's what we did by throwing $180 billion in. AIG should have been liquidated and reorganized. We should not have been, in fact, in the middle of it. And look, there were exceptions, but I cannot name one of them in the financial community that we handled properly.
But you know what? It's not over. You know, there are still trillions of government guarantees that allow these companies to basically take all these risks and know that if they fail, their government will be there to save them. This is not capitalism. You know, this is basically socializing the losses and privatizing the gains. This is a kind of oligarchy. And this is not a right-left issue. And that's why I'm glad we're agreeing on that, because there's a kind of...
Well, it's disappointing to me. I was hoping for a big cat fight here. Maybe
there is a lazy form of journalism that wants to see everything as right versus left.
Right.
And it's not. You know, every single American should want accountability. We need to know where did that money go. They're not telling us.
And we have great bankruptcy laws that if they went through, for example, the motor companies and some of the financials, if they had gone through it earlier, they probably would be a lot better off. And here, inevitably, GM did go bankrupt. But it should have happened a long time ago without us giving them this Band-Aid to just keep them swimming in the water before they sink.
And Bill, the pigs that are most important to look at now, so going back to your book, we have not indicted, forget about Madoff, but basically the kingpins of this multi-trillion-dollar big scheme of credit default swaps and so on, we have not indicted anybody. We've really gone after and said, was there criminal wrongdoing in addition to this vast greed? Well, of course there was. Countrywide was filled with bribes they paid under the table, discounts on loans to hundreds of people in and around government. Have we done anything about it? No. Quite frankly, the Senate today just said, well, there's no problem with the senators who got the discount. I let the Senate Ethics Committee do what they want. I want to know, what about all the other people that got these discounts? And why is it that Angela Mazzillo, right now, Mazzillo, is in fact sitting there saying, well, I'm guilty of SEC violations, but don't worry about the friends of Angelo that gave no points, special loans to all kinds of people, even loans that were not in his company's normal loan package, apartment loans. They gave them if you were important. Now, that should be investigated and lots more before we're done.
Let me ask one final question. I have like a minute, but you brought up partisanship, and not everything has to be a left-right issue. When Bill Clinton came back with the two journalists the other day, maybe I shouldn't be surprised at this point, but I was surprised that so many right-wingers attacked him. I know Bill Clinton is an evil man because, what, he had a surplus and there was peace and prosperity and all things like that. But, it seemed like it was a win-win there.
I'm not aware of the criticism of him. I think he did the right thing.
Well, John
I'm glad
Bolton
he did it.
criticized
In fact, it's interesting. If there was any criticism, it was a deafening silence from the White House, who did not want to have any part of this. And I think they should.
That's not right.
Well, I mean, for diplomatic reasons, they were
the right way. We don't have relations with North Korea, so basically, when Bill Clinton went there, that was the deal. That's why, remember, he played it perfectly. He didn't smile a lot. He just
smile at all. He was very
disappeared for an hour or two with Kim Jong-il. But
there was this moving
listen,
moment.
I think he did the right thing, and I'm all in favor of it. And so,
what do you think it would have been if George Bush had gone? I mean, I'm not trying to start a fight. I'm just saying.
Actually, there was this interesting moment that Laura Link said that the door opened,
right,
and she saw Bill Clinton, and she knew her long nightmare was over. And I thought to myself, if she had seen George Bush, what would she thought?
He'd have been like, yeah, I got your sentence knocked down to 10 years hard labor.
Look, ex-presidents have a special role. And when they play it well, whether it's the Habitat for Humanity or various charities or what both the ex-presidents did after Katrina, if they play that role well, it's a benefit to the entire nation. And I think every time an ex-president, without directly confronting the current administration, does things that are good for America, we should all applaud.
And I will, but I got to wrap it up there, or else I'm going to be going over into, whatever the next show is. Thank you, panel. You were terrific.